When a former CEO escapes to a quiet Colorado valley, a surprise visitor drags him back into a billion-dollar storm. Only this time, the stakes aren't just business, they're everything. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Colton stepped out of his truck slowly, his eyes fixed on Marcus Bennett. His former business partner looked exactly as he remembered. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, confidence radiating from every pore. "Quite the place you've got here," Marcus called, gesturing at the farmhouse and the land surrounding it. "A bit rustic for my taste, but charming in its way." "What are you doing here, Marcus?" Colton asked, approaching the porch. Marcus smiled, the same smile he used to close million-dollar deals. "You weren't returning my calls. I thought a face-to-face conversation might be more productive. You flew all the way to Colorado to talk to me?" Colton couldn't hide his disbelief. "For a $2 billion company?" "Yes." Marcus's smile faded. "We need to talk, Colton. Inside, preferably. I've had enough of this nature, and for one day." Reluctantly, Colton led Marcus into his house. He was acutely aware of how different his home looked now compared to his sleek Chicago penthouse. The worn furniture, the simple decor, the mud on the floor from his work boots. Marcus took it all in with barely concealed disdain. "So this is what rock bottom looks like for Colton Hayes." "This isn't rock bottom," Colton said firmly. "This is exactly where I want to be," Marcus laughed. "Right. The great Colton Hayes reduced to playing farmer. Come on, you can't be serious about this life." "I've never been more serious about anything," Colton replied. "Now what do you want?" Marcus sat down at the kitchen table uninvited. "I want you back at Hayes and Bennett. The company is floundering without you. Clients are leaving, staff morale is at an all-time low." "That sounds like a management problem," Colton said, remaining standing. "Not my problem." "It is your problem," Marcus insisted. "It's your company too. Your name is still on the door." "You made it very clear that it wasn't my company anymore when you pushed me out," Colton reminded him. Marcus had the decency to look uncomfortable. "That was a mistake. The board overreacted. We all did. And now that you're facing consequences, you want me to come back and fix everything," Colton said flatly. "I want us to fix it together," Marcus corrected, "as partners, like we were always meant to be." Colton shook his head. "We were never partners, Marcus, not really. You were always looking for ways to get ahead, no matter who you had to step on." "That's business," Marcus said with a shrug. "You used to understand that." "Maybe I did," Colton admitted, "but I don't want to be that person anymore." Marcus studied him. "Is this about the heart attack? Because the company health plan covers excellent cardiac care." The casual dismissal of Colton's near-death experience stung. "It's about living a life that means something," Colton said. "About waking up every day and doing work I believe in." "And what exactly do you believe in now?" Marcus asked, gesturing around the simple kitchen. "Dirt." Before Colton could respond, they heard a vehicle approaching. Through the window, Colton saw Lila's truck pulling up. Marcus noticed his reaction. This must be the famous Lila Monroe. I've been looking forward to meeting her." Colton moved toward the door. "Wait here." But Marcus was already following him onto the porch. Lila was climbing out of her truck, a confused expression on her face as she took in the expensive car and the stranger in the suit. "Lila," Colton called. "I wasn't expecting you." She approached cautiously. "I was driving by and saw the car. Thought I should check if everything was okay." "Everything's fine," Colton assured her. "This is Marcus Bennett, my former business partner. Marcus, this is Lila Monroe." Marcus stepped forward, hand extended. "A pleasure to meet you, Ms. Monroe. I've heard so much about you." Lila shook his hand briefly, her expression guarded. "Funny. I haven't heard much about you." Marcus laughed. "Well, Colton has always been selective about the details he shares." The pointed comment wasn't lost on either of them. Lila glanced at Colton, who looked uncomfortable. "I should go," she said. "Let you two catch up." "No," Colton said quickly. "Stay, please. Marcus was just leaving." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Was I? We haven't finished our discussion." "Yes, we have," Colton said firmly. "I'm not coming back, Marcus. Not now, not ever. Find someone else to save the company." Marcus's pleasant facade cracked slightly. It's not that simple, and you know it. We're losing the Westfield account. That's 30% of our annual revenue. Then you'd better start making some calls, Colton replied. I'm sure there are plenty of talented executives who would jump at the chance to replace me. The tension between the two men was palpable. Lila shifted uncomfortably, clearly feeling caught in the middle of something she didn't fully understand. I'll give you some space, she said, turning to leave. Wait, Colton called after her. He turned to Marcus. We're done here. I have plans. With Lila. Marcus looked between them, a calculated glint in his eye. Plans? Don't tell me you're actually serious about this arrangement. Marcus, Colton warned. But Marcus continued, focusing on Lila now. Has he told you about his life in Chicago? The penthouse, the yacht, the private jet? Some of it, Lila answered cautiously. And has he mentioned why he really left? Marcus pressed. It wasn't just about health or finding himself. It was about running away from responsibility. That's enough, Colton said sharply. Marcus ignored him. He had a company to run, people who depended on him. But when things got tough, he walked away, left everyone else to deal with the mess. Lila looked at Colton, questions in her eyes. Is that true? Before Colton could answer, Marcus pressed his advantage. Ask him about the staff that's being laid off. Ask him about the promises he made to people who trusted him. Stop, Colton said, his voice dangerously quiet. You don't get to come here and spin your version of events. You pushed me out, remember? Called a board meeting behind my back, gathered votes to remove me. Marcus had the grace to look slightly abashed. That was business. This is different. No, it's not, Colton insisted. It's the same game you've always played. Manipulate, pressure, guilt, whatever it takes to get what you want. The two men stared at each other, years of partnership and betrayal hanging in the air between them. Finally, Marcus sighed. Fine, be stubborn. But at least think about the offer. 2 weeks, that's all I'm asking. Come back, help us save the Westfield account, and then you can return to this. He waved his hand dismissively. Charming little experiment. I'll think about it, Colton said, mostly to end the conversation. Marcus nodded, seemingly satisfied with that small concession. He turned to Lila. It was a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Monroe. I can see why Colton is distracted. With that parting comment, he walked to his car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust on the dirt road. Colton and Lila stood in silence for a moment. I'm sorry about that, Colton finally said. Marcus has always had a flair for the dramatic. Is he right? Lila asked quietly. About people losing their jobs because you left? Colton ran a hand through his hair. It's more complicated than that. Marcus is using the layoffs as leverage to get me back. He's the one making those decisions, not me. But if you went back, even temporarily, you could stop it, Lila pressed. Maybe, Colton admitted. Probably, but it wouldn't solve the underlying problems at the company. Lila nodded slowly. I came by to tell you something. I've been thinking about your offer, about coming to Chicago with you. Colton felt his heart rate pick up. And I think I should, Lila said. If only to see this other life of yours, to understand who you really are. Relief washed over. Colton, really? You'll come? On one condition, Lila said, her expression serious. No more secrets, no more half-truths. I need to know everything, Colton, the good and the bad. No more secrets, Colton agreed. I promise. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. They stood together on his porch, looking out at the valley stretching before them, both contemplating the journey ahead. When would we leave? Lila asked. If I'm going to stop those layoffs, we should go as soon as possible, Colton said. Can you be ready tomorrow? Lila took a deep breath. That's fast, but yes, I can make arrangements for the nursery. Pete and his daughter can handle things for a couple of weeks. That night, after Lila left to prepare for their trip, Colton sat on his porch watching the stars emerge one by one. He thought about Marcus's visit, about the company he'd left behind, about the people who might lose their jobs if he didn't go back. But mostly, he thought about Lila, about her agreeing to come with him, to see the world he'd left behind. It filled him with both excitement and apprehension. What would she think of Chicago, of his old life, of the person he used to be? The next morning, Colton packed a small suitcase with the few city clothes he'd kept, suits that now felt stiff and formal after months of jeans and flannel. He looked around his farmhouse, surprised by how much it felt like home after such a short time. He drove to Lila's place to pick her up, finding her on the porch with a single suitcase and a nervous expression. "Ready?" he asked, getting out of his truck. "As I'll ever be," Lila replied. She looked different. She'd put her hair up and was wearing a simple dress instead of her usual work clothes, but she still had her work boots on, a detail that made Colton smile. "So you look beautiful," he said. Lila rolled her eyes, but he could see she was pleased. "Don't get used to it. This is as dressed up as I get." They drove to the small regional airport where Colton had arranged for a private plane, a remnant of his former life that he'd called upon for this trip. "A private jet?" Lila asked as they approached the small Gulf Stream. "Seriously?" "It was the fastest way," Colton explained, "and I didn't think you'd want to spend 6 hours in a car with me." Lila looked at the plane with a mixture of awe and discomfort. "I've never flown private before. It's just transportation," Colton assured her. "A bit more comfortable than coach, that's all." But as they boarded and Lila took in the luxurious interior, the plush leather seats, the fully stocked bar, Colton could see her realizing just how different their worlds were. "This is how you used to travel all the time?" she asked, settling into one of the seats. "For business, yes," Colton admitted. "When time was money." "And now?" Lila asked. "Now I prefer my truck," Colton said. "There's something to be said for the journey, not just the destination." The flight to Chicago took just under 3 hours. As they began their descent, Colton watched Lila staring out the window at the sprawling city below, so different from the open spaces of their valley. "It's so big," she murmured. "So many buildings, so many people." "It can be overwhelming at first," Colton said, "but it has its own kind of beauty." A car was waiting for them at the airport, another arrangement from Colton's previous life. The driver knew him, greeting him as Mr. Hayes with a respectful nod. As they drove through downtown Chicago, Colton pointed out landmarks, trying to see the city through Lila's eyes. She was quiet, taking it all in. The towering skyscrapers, the rush of people on the sidewalks, the constant flow of traffic. "Where are we staying?" she finally asked. "I still have my penthouse," Colton explained. "I never sold it. Couldn't bring myself to let it go completely, I guess." They pulled up to one of the city's most prestigious buildings. The doorman greeted Colton warmly, expressing surprise and pleasure at seeing him again. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent. When the doors opened directly into Colton's penthouse, Lila's eyes widened. The space was massive, floor to ceiling, windows offering panoramic views of the city, sleek modern furniture. Art pieces worth more than her nursery's annual revenue hanging on the walls. "This is yours?" she asked, walking to the windows to take in the view. "It was," Colton said. "Now it's just a place I own." Lila turned to look at him. "How can you say that? This is incredible." Colton shrugged. "It's just space. Expensive space, but still just space. The farm feels more like home now." Lila didn't look convinced. She wandered through the apartment, taking in the gourmet kitchen she doubted Colton had ever cooked in, the media room with its massive screen, the multiple bedrooms each with their own bathroom. "The guest room is through there," Colton said, pointing down a hallway. "Or you can take the master bedroom if you prefer. I can sleep in one of the others." "The guest room is fine," Lila said quickly. Despite their growing closeness, despite the kiss they'd shared, they hadn't discussed what this trip meant for their relationship. Colton nodded, respecting her boundaries. "I'll let you get settled. We should leave for the office in about an hour." "The office?" Lila looked surprised. "Today, we just got here." "If I'm going to stop those layoffs, I need to move quickly," Colton explained. "Marcus is expecting me tomorrow, but I want to see what's really going on before I talk to him." Lila nodded, understanding. "Of course. I'll be ready." An hour later, they were in another car heading toward the gleaming glass tower that housed Hayes and Bennett Marketing. Lila had changed into the nicest outfit she'd packed, a simple blue dress that suddenly felt woefully inadequate for the environment she was about to enter. "You look perfect," Colton assured her, sensing her discomfort. "And remember, these people worked for me, not the other way around." The security guard at the front desk did a double take when he saw Colton. "Mr. Hayes, welcome back, sir," Colton smiled. "Just visiting, Carl. Is Diane Thompson in today?" "Yes, sir. Should I call up and let her know you're coming?" "No need," Colton said. "I'd like to surprise her." As they rode the elevator to the executive floor, Lila whispered, "Everyone knows you here." "I built this company," Colton replied simply. "Or co-built it, I should say." The elevator doors opened and they stepped into a bustling office space. Heads turned as people recognized Colton, whispers spreading quickly. A young assistant nearly dropped her coffee when she saw him. "Mr. Hayes," she exclaimed, "we didn't know you were coming today." "Hello, Jennifer," Colton greeted her warmly. "Is Diane in her office?" "Yes, sir. She's meeting with HR about the, Jennifer trailed off, glancing uncomfortably at Lila. "The layoffs?" Colton finished for her. "That's why I'm here." He led Lila through the office, nodding and greeting people as they went. Lila could see the respect in their eyes, the way they straightened when he approached. This was a different Colton than the one she knew, more commanding, more assured, a natural leader. They reached a corner office where a middle-aged woman with short grey hair was reviewing documents with two younger staff members. She looked up as Colton knocked on her open door and her face lit up. "Colton!" She rose immediately, coming around her desk to embrace him. "Thank God you're here." "Hello, Diane," Colton said, returning the hug. "This is Lila Monroe." Diane smiled warmly. "Aunt Lila, the wildflower lady. Colton mentioned you when I called." Lila shook her hand, surprised that Colton had talked about her. "Nice to meet you." "Can we talk privately?" Colton asked Diane. "Of course." She dismissed the other staff members and closed the door behind them. "How bad is it really?" Colton asked once they were alone. Diane sighed heavily. "Worse than I told you. Marcus is dismantling whole departments, mostly people loyal to you. He's calling it restructuring, but it's personal." "And the Westfield account," Colton pressed. "They're meeting tomorrow to make their final decision," Diane said. "Marcus has been handling them personally, but they're not impressed. They want—" "You," Colton nodded, thinking, "who else knows I'm here?" "No one yet," Diane said. "But word travels fast in this building." "Good. I want to talk to some of the team before I see Marcus." Colton turned to Lila. "Do you mind if we stay a bit longer? I need to get a better picture of what's happening." "Of course not," Lila said. "This is why we came." For the next few hours, Colton met with various team members, listening to their concerns, assessing the damage Marcus had done in his absence. Lila watched him work, impressed by his focus, his knowledge, his genuine concern for the people who worked for him. By late afternoon, Colton had a clear picture of the situation, and it was grim. Marcus had been making increasingly erratic decisions, alienating staff and clients alike. The company was in real danger of collapse. As they left the building, Lila asked, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," Colton admitted. "But I can't let those people lose their jobs because of Marcus's ego." That evening, they ate dinner at Colton's favorite restaurant, a small Italian place tucked away on a side street. Despite its unassuming appearance, the maitre d' greeted Colton like royalty, ushering them to the best table. "I take it you come here a lot?" Lila observed as they were seated. "I used to," Colton said. "At least once a week. Best pasta in the city." They ordered wine, and Colton watched as Lila took in the elegant surroundings, the well-dressed patrons, the subtle display of wealth and status. "It's a different world," she said softly. "Yes and no," Colton replied. "People are still just people, no matter where they eat dinner." Lila smiled at that. "True. But I bet most of them have never had dirt under their fingernails." "Their loss," Colton said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "There's something honest about dirt that you can't find in boardrooms." The gesture felt natural, as did the way Lila's fingers intertwined with his. They talked through dinner about what Colton had learned at the office, about his options, about what would happen next. "If I go to the Westfield meeting tomorrow, I can probably save the account," Colton explained. "But then what? Marcus is still in charge, still making bad decisions." "Could you go back permanently?" Lila asked, the question she'd been avoiding all day. Colton looked at her, his gaze steady. "Is that what you think I should do?" "I think you should do whatever feels right," Lila said carefully. "I saw how those people look at you, how they respect you. You built something important here." "I did," Colton agreed, "but it nearly killed me, literally." They were quiet for a moment, both aware of the crossroads they were approaching, not just for Colton's career, but for whatever was growing between them. "What about us?" Colton finally asked, the question that had been hanging in the air since that brief kiss on Lila's porch. Lila looked down at their joined hands. "I don't know. 24 hours ago, I was in my greenhouse, worrying about seedlings. Now I'm in Chicago trying to figure out who you really are." "I'm the same person," Colton insisted, "whether I'm in work boots or a suit." "Are you?" Lila challenged gently. "Because the Colton I saw today, confident, commanding in his element, seems pretty different from the guy who couldn't tell weeds from tomato plants." "That's just surface stuff," Colton said. "The core is the same, and the core of me belongs in that valley now. With you, if you'll have me." The directness of his statement caught Lila off guard. "Colton, I know it's fast," he continued. "I know we've only known each other a few months. But I've never felt this way about anyone, Lila. And I hope you feel something too." Lila was quiet for a long moment. "I do," she finally admitted. "But I'm scared. Your life here is so different from mine. How could we ever make that work?" "My life isn't here anymore," Colton said firmly. "It's wherever you are." Before Lila could respond, Colton's phone rang. He checked the screen and frowned. "It's Marcus. I should take this," he answered, his expression growing more serious as he listened. "Slow down, Marcus. What do you mean emergency board meeting? Tomorrow morning?" "No, I understand. I'll be there." When he hung up, Lila could see the tension in his face. "What is it?" "Marcus has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Apparently, word got out that I was at the office today, and some of the board members want to talk to me. Directly." Colton ran a hand through his hair. "This could change everything." "How so?" Lila asked. "If enough board members support me, I could potentially reclaim my position," Colton explained. "Push Marcus out the way he pushed me out." "Is that what you want?" Lila asked carefully. Colton looked at her, conflict clear in his eyes. A month ago it would have been revenge, vindication. It would have seemed perfect. He reached for her hand again. "But now I'm not so sure." Back at the penthouse, Lila stood at the windows looking out at the glittering city lights. Colton came to stand beside her, his presence warm and solid. "It's beautiful in its way," she admitted. "All those lights, all that energy." "It is," Colton agreed. "But it's not the same as watching the sun rise over the valley." Lila turned to face him. "Be honest with me, Colton. If they offer you your old job back tomorrow, will you take it?" Colton considered the question seriously. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to fix what Marcus broke, to protect the people who work there, who trusted me. And the other part," Lila prompted. "The other part knows that life nearly killed me," Colton said quietly, "and that I found something more valuable in Colorado. With you." The honesty in his voice touched Lila deeply. "Whatever you decide, I understand," she said. "I've seen what you built here. It matters." "So do you," Colton replied simply. They stood together in silence, looking out at the city, the future stretching before them, uncertain but full of possibility. The next morning, Colton dressed in his best suit, the familiar routine of preparing for a board meeting coming back to him easily. When he emerged from his bedroom, he found Lila in the kitchen, already dressed in her blue dress, making coffee. "You don't have to come to the meeting," Colton said. "It might get ugly." Lila handed him a cup of coffee. "I came to Chicago to understand your world. This is part of it." Her support meant more to Colton than he could express. They drove to the office together, the city humming with morning energy. Around them, in the elevator, Lila reached for his hand. "Whatever happens in there, remember why you left in the first place." Colton squeezed her hand gratefully. "I will." The boardroom was full when they arrived. Marcus sat at the head of the table, visibly tense. The other board members, 10 men and women in expensive suits, turned as Colton entered with Lila. Colton, Marcus greeted him with forced casualness. And Ms. Monroe. I didn't realize this was a social visit. Lila is my guest, Colton said, firmly. She stays. No one objected as Lila took a seat at the back of the room. Colton moved to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Marcus. Well, Marcus began, since we're all here, let's begin. As you know, we called this emergency meeting to discuss the future of the company, interrupted Eleanor Williams, one of the oldest board members. Specifically, your leadership, Marcus. Marcus looked taken aback. My leadership? I thought we were here to discuss Colton's potential return. We are, said another board member, Richard Chen. But in what capacity is the question? Colton remained silent, watching the dynamics unfold. It was clear that Marcus had lost the confidence of at least some of the board. Colton, Eleanor turned to him. Many of us regret the hasty decision made 3 months ago. Your removal as CEO was ill-advised. The company has suffered in your absence, added Richard. Clients are leaving, staff morale is down, and the Westfield account, our largest, is on the verge of walking. Marcus tried to interrupt, but Eleanor held up her hand. Let me finish, Marcus. We've reviewed the numbers, and they tell a clear story. Hayes and Bennett was thriving under Colton's leadership. Since his departure, we've been in decline. That's not fair, Marcus protested. I inherited a difficult situation. A situation you helped create, Richard pointed out. The discussion continued, growing heated at times. Board members expressed their concerns, their frustrations, their hopes for the company's future. Throughout it all, Colton remained calm, listening more than speaking. Finally, Eleanor turned to him directly. We want you back, Colton, as CEO. Full reinstatement with expanded authority. And what about Marcus? Colton asked. The room fell. Silent. Marcus looked pale. That would be up to you, Eleanor said carefully. As CEO, you would have the authority to determine his role, or lack thereof. It was the moment of revenge Colton might have dreamed of in those first bitter days. After his ouster, the chance to do to Marcus exactly what had been done to him. But as he looked across the table at his former partner, he felt nothing but a weary sadness. Before I make any decisions, Colton said, I'd like to speak with Marcus privately. The board members exchanged glances but agreed. They filed out of the room, leaving Colton and Marcus alone. Lila hesitated, but Colton nodded that it was okay for her to stay. So this is it, Marcus said once the others had gone. Your triumphant return, my humiliation, perfectly scripted. That's not what this is about, Colton replied. No? Marcus laughed bitterly. Then what is it about, Colton? Enlighten me. It's about fixing what's broken, Colton said simply. The company, yes, but also us. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Us? There is no us. You made that clear when you walked away. I walked away because I had to, Colton explained. Because the life we built was killing me. But that doesn't erase 20 years of friendship, of partnership. For the first time, Marcus seemed to deflate, the bravado falling away. What do you want from me, Colton? The truth, Colton said. Why did you push me out? Really? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because I was jealous, he finally admitted. You were the face of the company, the one everyone respected, the one clients asked for by name. I was just there. The honesty was unexpected. We built that company together, Colton reminded him. Your contributions were just as valuable as mine. But not as visible, Marcus said. Not as celebrated. When you had that heart attack, I saw an opportunity to finally step out of your shadow. He shook his head. And I've been failing spectacularly ever since. Colton hadn't expected this vulnerability from Marcus, this admission of weakness. So what happens now? Marcus asked. You take my job, I clear out my office. Colton looked at Lila, who had been watching the exchange silently. Her presence reminded him of everything he'd found in Colorado, everything he stood to lose if he returned to his old life. No, Colton said finally. That's not what happens. Marcus looked confused. No, I'm not coming back, Marcus, Colton said. Not permanently. I'll help stabilize the company, secure the Westfield account, reassure the staff. But my life isn't here anymore. Marcus stared at him. "You're turning down CEO? After everything?" "That happened." "I am," Colton confirmed, "but I have a counter-proposal. A way forward that might work for everyone." For the next hour, Colton outlined his vision. A restructuring of leadership, a transition plan, a path forward that would protect the company and its employees without requiring him to return full-time. When the board members were called back in, Colton presented his plan. There was discussion, negotiation, compromise. But by early afternoon, an agreement had been reached. Colton would return as chairman of the board, a position that would allow him to guide the company's direction without being involved in day-to-day operations. Marcus would remain as CEO, but with more oversight and a restructured executive team. As they were wrapping up, Colton added one final condition. "I'll be working remotely from Colorado. I'll come to Chicago for quarterly board meetings and important client presentations, but otherwise my life is there now." The board members exchanged glances, but no one objected. The arrangement was unusual, but not unheard of. As they left the boardroom, Marcus approached Colton and Lila. "Why?" he asked simply. "You could have taken everything back. Why didn't you?" Colton looked at Lila, then back at Marcus. "Because I found something more important than winning." Marcus followed his gaze to Lila and seemed to understand. "She must be quite special." "She is," Colton agreed, "and so is the life we're building." Later that evening, as they packed their bags to return to Colorado the next day, Lila watched Colton moving around the penthouse, noticing how differently he carried himself here compared to at the farm. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Giving up CEO, working remotely, it's a big change from what you built." Colton came to stand in front of her. "I'm sure about one thing," he said, taking her hands in his. "I want a life with meaning, with purpose. With you, if you'll have me." Lila looked up at him, seeing both versions of Colton, the powerful executive and the man who had learned to plant tomatoes, and finding she loved them both. "I think I will have you," she said softly. "Dirt under your fingernails and all." Colton pulled her close, his kiss a promise of the future they would build together. A future that bridged both their worlds, both their lives. As they stood there, in the gleaming penthouse, plans already forming for their return to the valley, to the wildflowers, to the life they would create together, Colton felt a certainty he'd never known in all his years of business success. This, Lila in his arms, the farm waiting for them, the balance he'd finally found. This was what truly mattered. This was home. But as they prepared for bed that night, Colton's phone rang once more. It was Diane from the office. "Colton," she said, her voice tense, "there's something you need to know before you leave tomorrow." Colton listened, his expression growing serious. "Are you sure? How reliable is this information? I see, thank you for telling me." When he hung up, Lila could see the concern in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked. "There's a company, Horizon Ventures, making a play to buy up land in Whisper Valley," Colton explained, "including the area around our farms." "Horizon Ventures," Lila repeated. "I've never heard of them." "They're a development company," Colton explained, his mind racing. "They buy rural land, build luxury resorts, golf courses, that sort of thing." Lila's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "In our valley? But it's farmland, ranches. It's not a tourist destination." "Not yet," Colton said grimly. "But with the right marketing, anything can be turned into a destination." He should. No, he'd helped companies do exactly that for years. "How much land are they looking at?" Lila asked. "According to Diane, they've already bought 3 properties on the outskirts of town. They're moving fast, making offers well above market value." Lila sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "The Henderson place sold last week, and the old Davies Ranch just went on the market. I thought it was strange, they weren't even listed officially." "They probably approached the owners directly," Colton said. "It's a common tactic. Catch people off guard with an offer they can't refuse." "But why now? Why our valley?" Colton hesitated, a thought occurring to him that he didn't want to voice. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." They changed their flight to the earliest available the next morning. Neither slept well, both too preoccupied with this new threat to their peaceful life in Colorado. On the plane, Lila was quiet, staring out the window at the clouds below. "What if they approach my neighbors?" she finally asked. "The fields around my nursery, they're all owned by older farmers. A big offer might be tempting." "We'll talk to them," Colton assured her. "Make sure they understand what's at stake." "And your land?" Lila asked. "You own more than just your farm, right?" Colton nodded. "About 200 acres in total, including the parcels around your nursery." "Would you sell?" The question was barely a whisper. "Never," Colton said firmly. "That land is part of our future now." The hour wasn't lost on Lila. Despite everything, a small smile touched her lips. "Our future?" Colton took her hand. "If you want it to be." They landed mid-morning and drove straight from the airport to Pete Watson's farm. The older man was surprised to see them back so soon. "Thought you two would be in the big city for at least a week," he said, offering them coffee at his kitchen table. "Something came up," Colton explained. "Pete, have you heard anything about a company called Horizon Ventures?" Pete's expression darkened. "Matter of fact, I have. Some smooth-talking fellow in a fancy car stopped by yesterday, asked if I'd be interested in selling, offered nearly twice what this place is worth." "What did you tell him?" Lila asked anxiously. "Told him this land's been in my family for 3 generations, and it'll be here for 3 more, Pete said firmly. "But I know the Hendersons took their offer, and word is they approached half a dozen other farms in the area. We need to warn people," Lila said. "If enough farms sell, it could change everything about the valley." "Already planning a town meeting," Pete confirmed, "tomorrow night at the community center. Figured folks should know what's happening." As they were leaving Pete's, Colton's phone rang. The caller ID showed a Chicago number he didn't recognize. "Colton Hayes," he answered. "Mr. Hayes, this is Thomas Ward with Horizon Ventures," came a smooth, confident voice. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Colton exchanged a glance with Lila. "Not at all, Mr. Ward. What can I do for you?" "I understand you own several parcels of land in Whisper Valley, Colorado," Ward continued. "Our company is developing a luxury resort and residential community in the area, and your properties would be strategically valuable to our plans. Is that so?" Colton kept his tone neutral, giving nothing away. "We're prepared to make a very generous offer," Ward said, "well above market value." "I appreciate the interest, Mr. Ward, but my land isn't for sale," Colton replied. Ward chuckled. "Everyone says that at first, Mr. Hayes, but I think once you hear our offer, you might reconsider. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss the details." "I don't think that's necessary," Colton said. "My position won't change." "I see." Ward's tone cooled slightly. "Well, if you change your mind, here's my direct line. Our offer won't be on the table indefinitely." After hanging up, Colton turned to Lila. "They're moving fast. They've already identified all the landowners they want to target." "How did they even get your number?" Lila asked. Colton frowned. "Good question. They spent the rest of the day visiting neighboring farms, warning them about Horizon Ventures, and encouraging them to attend the town meeting. Most seemed wary of selling, but a few were clearly tempted by the prospect of a windfall. By evening, they were exhausted. They stopped at Lila's house first, where she picked up mail and checked on her plants. "Stay for dinner?" she asked Colton. "I can make pasta." "I'd like that," he replied, "but first I need to make a few calls." While Lila cooked, Colton sat on her porch, using his business contacts to dig into Horizon Ventures. By the time dinner was ready, he had a clearer picture of what they were dealing with. "They're a subsidiary of Bennett Global," Colton explained as they ate. "A holding company owned by none other than Marcus Bennett." Lila nearly dropped her fork. "Your former business partner? The one we just saw in Chicago?" "The very same," Colton confirmed grimly. "This isn't random, Lila. Marcus is targeting the valley because of me." "That's twisted," Lila said, trying to process this information. "Just because you chose to live here?" "It's more than that," Colton said. "It's revenge, pure and simple. He knows I care about this place, about the people here, about you." "So this whole resort plan, it's just to get back at you?" Lila asked, incredulously. "Maybe not entirely," Colton conceded. The valley is beautiful, and with the right development they could make a lot of money. But the timing, the aggressive approach, that has Marcus written all over it. What do we do? Lila asked, her voice small. Colton reached across the table for her hand. We fight. Together. The town meeting the next evening was packed. Nearly everyone in Whisper Valley had heard about Horizon Ventures by now, and opinions were divided. Some saw the potential development as progress, a chance for economic growth. Others feared the destruction of their rural way of life. Pete Watson called the meeting to order, then introduced Colton to speak. As Colton stood at the front of the community center, he was acutely aware of how far he'd come since arriving. In the valley, from outsider to neighbor, from city executive to advocate for this small community. Many of you know me as the guy who bought the old Miller place, Colton began. The city boy who didn't know a tractor from a lawnmower. This drew a few chuckles from the crowd. What most of you don't know is that before I came here, I was the CEO of Hayes & Bennett Marketing, one of the largest firms in Chicago. I left that life behind for reasons that seemed clear at the time. I was stressed, overworked, sick. I needed peace. I found it here among you all. Colton paused, looking around at the faces watching him. What I've learned since arriving is that this valley isn't just beautiful, it's special. The community you've built, the way you support each other, the balance you've struck with the land. It's worth protecting. He explained what he'd discovered about Horizon Ventures, about their connection to Marcus Bennett, about their plans for a resort development that would forever change the character of Whisper Valley. But here's what you need to know, Colton continued. This is just the beginning. Once they start building, they won't stop. The quiet roads you drive now will be crowded with tourists. The open fields will become golf courses. The family farms will be replaced by vacation homes used a few weeks each year. Murmurs spread through the crowd, some concerned, others skeptical. He's right. Pete stood up. My cousin lives near Aspen. Their town was just like ours 30 years ago. Now the locals can't even afford to live there anymore. More voices joined in, sharing concerns, asking questions. Colton answered as best he could, drawing on his business knowledge to explain the typical pattern of such developments. So what do we do? Someone finally asked. They're offering good money. Some folks here could really use it. I understand that, Colton acknowledged. And I'm not here to tell anyone what to do with their property. That's your decision. But before you sell, I want you to consider what's really at stake. Not just land, but a way of life. Lila stood up then, moving to join Colton at the front of the room. I've lived in this valley my whole life, she said. My mother taught me the names of every wildflower that grows here. I built my business on the knowledge that this land would be here, unchanged for generations. She looked out at her neighbors, at people she'd known her entire life. I know times get hard, farming isn't easy, but once this land is gone, it's gone forever. And with it, everything that makes this place special. The room was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, people began to talk, to share ideas. A local lawyer offered to review any contracts before people signed. A farmer suggested they form a land trust to protect critical areas. Others proposed zoning changes that might limit development. By the end of the meeting, a plan was forming, not just to resist Horizon Ventures, but to actively protect the valley for the future. As people filed out, many stopped to thank Colton and Lila. The mood was cautiously optimistic, a community united in purpose. That went better than I expected, Lila said as they walked back to her truck. People care about this place, Colton replied. They just needed to be reminded what's at stake. The next morning, Colton received another call from Thomas Ward of Horizon Ventures. Mr. Hayes, Ward began, his tone less friendly than before. I understand you led quite the rally against our project last night. Word travels fast, Colton observed. Small towns, Ward said dismissively. Listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Our development would bring jobs, tax revenue, tourism. It would be good for Whisper Valley. Good for some, perhaps, Colton countered. Devastating for others, Ward sighed. Mr. Hayes, let me be direct. We're moving forward with this project, with or without your cooperation. We already have commitments from several key landowners. Which ones? Colton asked sharply. I'm not at liberty to say, Ward replied smoothly. But the point is, this is happening. You can either benefit from it or be left behind. Is Marcus Bennett aware you're having this conversation? Colton asked. There was a brief silence. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell Marcus if he wants to talk. He can call me himself, Colton said, and tell him that turning this valley into a playground for the wealthy won't change anything between us. Ward's tone hardened. This isn't personal, Mr. Hayes. It's business. With Marcus, it's always personal, Colton replied. And so is this. Valley to me. After hanging up, Colton drove to Lila's nursery. He found her in the greenhouse transplanting seedlings with steady, practiced hands. They're still moving forward, he told her. They claim to have commitments from several landowners already. Lila looked up, worry in her eyes. Do you believe them? I don't know, Colton admitted, but they're confident. So, what's our next move? Lila asked. Colton had been thinking about this all morning. I need to go back to Chicago, confront Marcus directly, find out what's really behind this. Lila set down her trowel. When? Tomorrow, Colton said. The sooner the better. I'm coming. With you, Lila said firmly. Colton smiled, touched by her determination. I was hoping you'd say that. They spent the day checking on neighbors, continuing to build support for their resistance to the development. By evening, they had a clearer picture of who had sold and who was holding firm. The Hendersons and the Millers have definitely sold, Leela reported as they sat on her porch, and the Johnsons are considering it. That's still not enough land. For what they're planning, Colton said. They need a continuous stretch for a resort and golf course, which is why they want your parcels, Lila concluded. They connect most of the others. And yours, Colton added. Your nursery sits right in the middle of their ideal development area. Lila looked out at her wildflower fields, at the greenhouse where she'd spent countless hours cultivating native species. I would never sell. This land it's everything to me. Colton moved to sit beside her on the porch swing. I know. It's become everything to me, too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the valley they both loved, both determined to protect. The flight to Chicago the next day felt different from their previous trip. This time, they were united in purpose, partners in a fight that mattered deeply to both of them. Marcus was surprised when they showed up at his office unannounced. Colton, he greeted them, his expression carefully neutral. Ms. Monroe, this is unexpected. Cut the act, Marcus, Colton said, closing the office door behind them. We know about Horizon Ventures. We know it's you. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. Buy that? Yes, that, Colton said sharply. Buying up land in Whisper Valley, a resort development. Is this really your idea of revenge? Marcus's smile faded. Not everything is about you, Colton. Whisper Valley has potential. It's a sound investment. It's a coincidence that you're targeting the exact community where I've settled, Colton challenged. A fortunate coincidence, Marcus admitted. I won't deny there's a certain symmetry to it. You took something from me. Now I'm taking something from you. I didn't take anything from you, Colton protested. The board offered me back the CEO position. I turned it down. I left you in charge. With oversight, Marcus said bitterly. With limits. With the board watching my every move, waiting for me to fail. Lila, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. So you're willing to destroy an entire community, people's homes and livelihoods just to get back at Colton? Marcus turned his attention to her. Ms. Monroe, business is rarely personal, but when it is, it's very personal indeed. Colton taught me that. What do you want, Marcus? Colton asked wearily. What will it take to stop this? Marcus studied him. Interesting. You really do care about this place. I care about the people there, Colton said. About their way of life. About the land. About her, Marcus added, nodding toward Lila. Yes, Colton said simply. About her. Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. Come back. What? Colton was caught off guard. Come back to Hayes and Tynerman Bennett, full-time as CEO. Marcus leaned forward. I'll dissolve Horizon Ventures, sell the Whisper Valley properties back to their original owners at cost. Walk away completely. "And what happens to you?" Colton asked suspiciously. "I stay on as COO," Marcus said, "where I should have been all along. We rebuild what we started together." Colton shook his head. "That's not going to happen, Marcus. My life is in Colorado now." "Then we have nothing more to discuss," Marcus said coldly. "Horizon Ventures will proceed as planned. We break ground in 3 months." As they left Marcus's office, Lila could see the conflict on Colton's face. "You're considering it," she said quietly. "No," Colton replied firmly. "Not for a second." "But it would solve everything," Lila pressed. "The valley would be safe." "At what cost?" Colton asked. "My life, our future? I didn't leave Chicago just to be pulled back in at the first sign of trouble." Lila nodded, relieved but still worried. "So what's our plan B?" Colton smiled grimly. "I'm working on it." They checked into a hotel downtown, both too preoccupied to enjoy the luxury of the suite. Colton spent hours on the phone, talking to contacts, pulling strings, calling in favors. By midnight, he had the beginnings of a strategy. "Marcus isn't the only one with resources," he told Lila, as they sat on the hotel balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I've made some calls. I think I can block him, but it's going to take everything I have." "What do you mean?" Lila asked. "Financially," Colton explained. "I'll need to liquidate everything, this hotel, my penthouse, my investment portfolio, all of it." "To do what?" Lila asked, surprised by the scale of his commitment. "To create a land trust," Colton said. "A legal entity that would protect the valley from development, not just now but forever. I can buy out the properties Horizon has already acquired, add them to the parcels I own and place it all in trust." Lila stared at him. "You'd do that? Give up everything?" "Not everything," Colton said, taking her hand. "Just things, money, property, the stuff that doesn't really matter." The next morning, they met with Colton's lawyer to begin the process. It was complex, expensive, and would take time, but it was possible. The trust would need a board of local trustees, the lawyer explained, people committed to preserving the valley's agricultural character. Pete Watson, Lila suggested immediately, and Sarah Miller from the Conservation District. They'd be perfect. "And you," Colton added. "Your knowledge of native plants, of the local ecosystem, would be invaluable." Lila looked surprised. "Me? On a board? Who better?" Colton smiled. "You understand what's at stake better than anyone." As they left the lawyer's office, Colton's phone rang again. It was Diane from Hayes and Bennett. "Colton, you need to get over." "Here," she said urgently. "Marcus is in trouble, big trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Colton asked. "The SEC kind," Diane replied. "They're here now reviewing documents. Something about financial improprieties with Horizon Ventures." Colton and Lila rushed to the Hayes and Bennett offices, finding the place in chaos. Men and women in suits were carrying boxes of documents. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. "What happened?" Colton asked Diane when he found her. "Marcus has been using company funds to finance Horizon," she explained. "Diverting money from client accounts, cooking the books. It all came crashing down this morning when the quarterly audit revealed discrepancies." "How bad is it?" Colton asked. "Bad," Diane confirmed. "He could face criminal charges. And the company—" She looked around at the chaos. "I don't know if we'll survive this." Colton spent the next several hours talking to SEC investigators, board members, and frightened employees. By evening, a clearer picture had emerged. Marcus had gambled everything on Horizon Ventures, convinced it would make him a fortune and restore his reputation. When funding fell short, he began siphoning money from Hayes and Bennett. "The board wants to talk to you," Diane told Colton as they sat in her office. "They're meeting now. They want you to take over, to try to salvage what's left." Colton sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I can't abandon the people here," he said to Lila. "Not with their jobs at stake, but I can't leave the valley." "Either? Maybe you don't have to choose," Lila suggested quietly. "What do you mean?" Colton asked. "Remote work," Lila said. "You said it yourself when we were here last. You can be chairman, guide the company through this crisis, without living in Chicago full-time." "And Horizon Ventures?" Colton asked. "If Marcus is facing charges, the project will likely be frozen," Lila reasoned. "That gives us time to implement your land trust idea." Colton nodded slowly, seeing a path forward. It could work. It won't be easy, but it could work. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus was formally charged with securities fraud and removed from the company. The board unanimously voted to make Colton the new chairman and interim CEO, with the understanding that he would work primarily from Colorado, coming to Chicago only when absolutely necessary. Horizon Ventures was placed in receivership, its assets frozen pending the outcome of Marcus's case. The land they had purchased in Whisper Valley was tied up in legal proceedings, but Colton's lawyers were confident they could eventually acquire it for the trust. Through it all, Lila was by Colton's side, steady, practical, offering perspective when the business drama threatened to consume him. "Remember why we're doing this," she would say when he seemed overwhelmed. "It's not about Hayes and Bennett. It's not about Marcus. It's about our valley. Our valley." The phrase always centered him, reminded him of what truly mattered. Finally, after weeks of negotiations, legal battles, and sleepless nights, Colton and Lila returned to Colorado. As they drove through the valley toward Lila's nursery, they could see signs of spring everywhere. Wildflowers beginning to bloom in the fields, trees budding, new life emerging after the long winter. "We did it," Lila said softly, looking out at the familiar landscape. "We protected it, for now," Colton cautioned. "The trust isn't finalized yet. There will be other challenges. But we'll face them together," Lila said, reaching for his hand. "That's what matters." At the nursery, they found Pete Watson waiting on the porch with a bottle of champagne. "Heard you two were coming home today," he called as they got out of the truck. "Thought we should celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Colton asked. "Victory," Pete said simply. "Word is that resort plan is dead in the water, and rumor has it we have you two to thank." More neighbors arrived as the evening progressed, bringing food, drinks, and gratitude. The impromptu gathering became a celebration of community, of shared purpose, of the valley they all loved. As the party wound down, Colton found Lila standing at the edge of her wildflower field, looking out at the sunset, painting the mountains gold. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, coming to stand beside her. "I was just thinking about how much has changed since you showed up in those ridiculous boots," Lila said with a smile. "How much I've changed. For the better, I hope," Colton said. "Definitely for the better," Lila confirmed. "I was so closed, off before, so afraid of being hurt again that I wouldn't let anyone close, especially not some city guy with a fancy job and a mysterious past." Colton laughed. "I wasn't exactly open to connection either. I came here to escape, to hide. I never expected to find someone who would make me want to build something new." Lila turned to face him, her expression serious now. "Is that what we're doing, building something new?" "I hope so," Colton said softly. "Because I love you, Lila Monroe. I loved you when you taught me how to stake tomatoes. I loved you when you stood up at that town meeting. I loved you when you flew to Chicago to fight for our valley." Lila's eyes glistened in the fading light. "I love you too, Colton Hayes. The real you, not the CEO or the would-be farmer. Just you." Colton reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I had this made in Chicago," he said, opening it to reveal a simple ring with a small blue stone. "It's a columbine, your mother's favorite. I remembered you telling me." Lila stared at the ring, then back at Colton. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'll build a life with me," Colton said. "Here, in this valley, with wildflowers in your garden and dirt under your fingernails and me by your side. For as long as we both have." "Yes," Lila whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Yes to all of it." As Colton slipped the ring onto her finger, the last rays of sunlight caught the blue stone, making it glow like a real wildflower. Around them, the evening breeze rustled through the fields, carrying the promise of summer, of growth, of a future they would cultivate together. Months later, on a warm July morning, Colton stood in the center of his farm, their farm now, as he and Lila had combined their properties after their small, intimate wedding in her wildflower field. The land trust was official, protecting thousands of acres of Whisper Valley from development. Hayes and Bennett was slowly recovering under new leadership, with Colton providing guidance from afar. Marcus had accepted a plea deal and was serving time. his dreams of revenge now just a distant memory. But none of that mattered as much as what was right in front of him. Lila kneeling in the garden they'd planted together, her hands in the soil she loved, wildflowers blooming in her wake. She looked up and smiled at him, the sun catching the blue stone on her finger. "You're staring?" "Again," she called. "Just admiring the view," Colton replied, walking toward her. "The most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "The wildflowers are nice this year," Lila agreed with a teasing smile. "Not the wildflowers," Colton said, kneeling beside her in the dirt, not caring about his clothes. "You, always you." Lila leaned over and kissed him, her lips tasting of sunshine and possibility. Welcome home, Colton Hayes. And he was home, truly home, in a way he'd never been before. In this valley, on this land, with this woman who had taught him that the most precious growth happened not in glass towers or marble boardrooms, but in the rich soil of a life authentically lived. Together, they turned back to their garden, hands intertwined, planting seeds for the seasons to come, seasons they would witness side by side as wildflowers bloomed in their wake. The end.